The humoral response involves B cells that are able to proliferate into plasma and memory cells. Their plasma form secretes antibodies that obstruct pathogen function. The humoral response approaches cells that are uninfected by pathogens. The cell-mediated response involves cytotoxic T cells that bind to infected cells and cause them to go through apoptosis. Both B cells and cytotoxic T cells are activated by helper T cells, meaning that neither immune response could act without the helper T cells. As I mentioned before, the humoral response utilizes the B cells that are able to secrete antibodies that target pathogens for destruction. So, going into the actual process, before a B cell is able to secrete antibodies, it must be activated by a helper T cell, which is shown in the first figure. After it activates the B cell, which then differentiates into plasma and memory cells. The plasma form is the one that secretes antibodies, which can then participate in the marking of pathogens for destruction. So here's the cell-mediated response, which utilizes cytotoxic T cells, and while it is not shown, it is activated by the helper T cell as well. After the cytotoxic T cells are activated, they bind to a cell that is already infected by the pathogen. Once it binds, it releases perforins, which make pores in the cell membrane where ions and water rush in to lyse the cell. Let's get on to the fun facts. So the first one is that B cells can recognize both free antigens and antigens on cells, while cytotoxic T cells can only recognize antigen-presenting cells. So this means that as the B cell is associated with humoral, while cytotoxic T is associated with cell-mediated response, this shows the specific cases of cell or antigen types that each type of cell can bind to. The second one says that MHC1 molecules are found on all cells, while MHC2 molecules are restricted to antigen-presenting cells. So this means that if a cell has an MHC2 molecule, it must be an antigen-presenting cell, whereas with an MHC1 molecule, you have to consider more factors before distinguishing the cell. The last one is that mature T cells are considered naive cells until they have encountered an MHC molecule for which they are matched for and build up some immunological memory. So let's use an analogy to further explain this concept. Using its classic Webster Dictionary definition, if a cell is naive, it must be innocent. In this case, for a cell to lose its innocence, it must encounter a specific MHC molecule to build up some immunological memory.
Created using Powtoon.